Thank you very much, Raymond, for that beautiful welcome. My name is Tegan Zimmerman, and I am the chair of the Alexa McDonough Institute for Women, Gender, and Social Justice here at MSVU, which is located in Kjipuktuk, part of the Mi'kmaq, the unceded ancestral territory, which remains the homeland of Mi'kmaq, the first people of this land. This territory is covered by the covenant chain of treaties of peace and friendship, which are living treaties, are living agreements that establish the rules for an ongoing treaty relationship between nations. We pay respect to the knowledge embedded in the Mi'kmaq custodians of the lands and waters, and to the elders past, present, and future. And it's my great pleasure this evening to welcome you to our annual Alexa McDonough lecture called Never Back Down, Bold Leadership, Lasting Impact, and to introduce you to our co-host and the executive director from the Douglas Coldwell Layton Foundation, Josh Bizjak.
Thank you so much, Tegan. And thank all of you for being here tonight. It is a tremendous honor to be back here in one of my favorite places in Canada at Mount St. Vincent University. It is our fourth consecutive event annually here at the university, and I have to tell you, this venue is just beautiful. So thank you so much for making this another home for the foundation. I wanted to talk really quickly about the foundation itself, for those of you who are unfamiliar. This foundation was established by Tommy Douglas in 1971. Now, I've had the privilege of being the executive director since 2021, rather. In that time, I've done some archival work, and I dug up the original letters patent in order to help guide the transformation that was going to take place under our new leadership. And what I discovered was that our CRA mandate was quite broad. And in the past, we had been doing a lot of good charitable work, but we hadn't been taking full advantage of the work that we could do and what Tommy Douglas had envisioned for us to do over 50 years ago. And in that document, we discovered that our purpose was to educate people about democracy, government, politics, and civic engagement. And we were to do that work through seminars, lectures, training events, special events, networking receptions, and original research. But we hadn't been living up to that. It was here at Mount St. Vincent University that a light bulb went off. In speaking with the folks at the Alexa McDonough Institute about an annual lecture in Alexa McDonough's honor. Well, wouldn't you know, because of that conversation that took place here in the fall of 2021, we now have 7 lectures across the country. We're in Winnipeg, Montreal, Victoria, Toronto, and Ottawa. And next year, we're going to be going to Regina. And if everything goes really well, we might even be in Edmonton at the University of Alberta, which is quite exciting. You know, I have a little interesting story. So the McDonough family has really embraced the foundation and the work we're doing. And my spouse and I and our little son, Wesley, are staying at the McDonough family cottage not far from here in Chester Basin. And so we got in late last night, but this morning, as I'm walking around, I noticed on the mantle there's a photo of Alexa. And she's with Nelson Mandela. And that's a photo that was new to me. I hadn't seen that one. That's in the private family collection, I guess. But boy, did I ever have to take stock in that moment about what a transformative, powerful person Alexa McDonough was. We all know how important her legacy is to this province, to Nova Scotia, but to our country. But in so many other ways, she continues to inspire us today. And so I want to say thank you to all of the people who have made it possible for us to continue this tradition at Mount St. Vincent University. I'd like to thank the Nova Scotia Teachers Union. Thank you so much for being one of our event sponsors. The Nova Scotia General Employees Union, and the Halifax and Dartmouth District Labour Council for sponsoring this event. We wouldn't be able to be here and make this event happen if it weren't for your generosity, so thank you. And then to all of our partners, thank you. I'll have a few more thank yous later on, but we're going to continue on with the programming. Now, this is the point in the program where we were going to bring in NDP MP Heather McPherson. However, just a few minutes ago, due to technical difficulties, Heather will be unable to join us via video.
My name is Heather McPherson, and I am the Member of Parliament for Edmonton Strathcona. I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there in person, but it is still such an honor to be included in the Alexa McDonough lecture series. You know, Alexa was one of those leaders who led the NDP through our hardest times. When the NDP lost official party status, she didn't give up. She dug in, she pulled us out of that hole, and she rebuilt the trust of Canadians one step at a time. And here we are again. It's not easy. I can empathize now more than ever with the weight Alexa carried. And I'm inspired by the hard work, the hope, and the courage that she showed and that she exemplified for others. And for me, there's another personal connection. I'm the current sponsor of the Post-Secondary Education Act legislation, which Alexa championed fiercely. To fight for strong and accessible education in this country, to carry Alexa's work forward, it's an honor for me. Now, the question we're considering today. The Trump administration has declared war on higher education, and we're starting to see the ripples here in Canada. Trump has always had a strange relationship with universities. After all, this is the man who thinks that academic freedom means yelling at your TV every time CNN or Jimmy Kimmel comes on. And let's not forget Trump University, which was, of course, far less a university and far more a very, very expensive scam. It's no surprise he sees knowledge and inquiry as threats, because they are a threat. They are a threat to people who would rather rule with fear and division than facts. But here's the serious part. The attacks we're seeing in the United States are showing up here too. Cuts to post-secondary funding, the laying off of instructors and staff on campuses, governments politicizing campuses, and attempts to silence voices they don't like. You know, when higher education is weakened, our democracy is weakened. So, what should federal leaders do? Here's what I believe. First, treat education as it is, a public good, not a privilege. That means stable, predictable federal funding so that provinces can't gut budgets and dump the costs on students and families. Second, we need to defend academic freedom. You know, that means saying without hesitation that politicians, whether in Washington, Ottawa, or Edmonton, do not get to decide which ideas are allowed. Universities must remain places where people can question, where they can argue, where they can discover answers. And third, we need collaboration. Education is provincial, but that doesn't mean Ottawa should sit back. We can bring provinces, Indigenous governments, universities, with both faculty and students together around shared goals. You know, the goals of affordability, of accessibility, and excellence. We can lead by example, not dictate from above. That's how I'd approach it. Working together, bringing people in from across jurisdictions, from across party lines, and with anyone who believes democracy depends upon education. Because it does. And if we want Canada to thrive, we need strong universities and colleges. We need spaces where young people can think critically, ask hard questions, and imagine something better. Alexa understood that. And I do too. And I will never stop fighting against Trumpisms, against cuts, against indifference. Thank you again for including me in this important conversation. And thank you for keeping Alexa's vision alive through all of your work.
I'm going to move on with introducing our next guest. We are extremely grateful to have a strong relationship, a working partnership with Abacus Data. Tonight, we have Vice President of Atlantic Canada for Abacus Data, Kelly Bennett, who's going to be providing us some fresh insights on women in politics and the important role that we have here in our country of making sure that every voice is heard within our democracy. So please join me in welcoming Kelly Bennett to their stage.
So I am thrilled to be here this evening and to see so many friends, colleagues, but also a lot of new faces. So I certainly look forward to sharing up here from the stage and the conversation that we're going to have up here, but I also plan to stick around afterwards. So I look forward to also meeting you one-on-one and connecting that way as well. So yes, that's right. I have the good fortune and privilege of bringing some fresh data that we're going to be sharing tonight. And this is fresh, new public opinion research that we have collected here in Nova Scotia. We actually collected it last week. But before we dive right into that, just want to take a couple of minutes and share some overarching thoughts. So I think it's important to acknowledge right up front that on this topic, I am someone who is very far from being objective. On this topic, I feel this topic very deeply. I am somebody who has, over the course of my life, and continues to be someone of extraordinary privilege. I'm someone who has an upper middle class background. I'm white, I'm heterosexual, and I also am somebody who is able-bodied. And yet, this topic is something that hits me hard, that I feel deeply. So I just want to share that up front and to say that this is for Alexa. That's my favorite picture. I think the expression on the face says it all. Many of you will recognize that. One of many nicknames for Alexa, the Iron Angel, Our Lady of Shocked and Appalled. And I'm nonpartisan, but I'm going to say it. The best premier Nova Scotia never had. So this is also for me, and this is for us. So as already shared, we've collected some new stuff, but I'm going to start with some bigger general facts. This is a well-informed audience, a passionate audience. Like you, I know you feel this topic deeply, so some of this may not come as a surprise to you, but I want to start by sharing it anyway, and then we'll reveal the newest stuff. So right now, Canada, our country, currently ranks 71st in the world when it comes to women's representation. Yeah, I share that reaction. About 30% of federal MPs currently in our House of Commons self-identify as being female. And 35% of MLAs in our Nova Scotia legislature currently identify as being female, with one member identifying as being gender diverse. And I took that information right off the Province House page, so my sincere apologies if that is not accurate, but that is the information that I found, and someone can politely correct me later if it's incorrect. So last week, we presented the last two facts that 30% rate of female MPs and that 35+1 rate of Nova Scotia MLAs to Nova Scotians through our Nova Scotia Omnibus survey, and we collected some reactions to those two pieces of information, those facts. So some of the results we're going to be sharing today and up here on the screen and from the stage, and then we can talk about them some more later, are sobering. They may be a little bit hard to hear. When we collected them and I started reviewing them, they hit me hard. But they also show that there's a strong desire for change right here in our province in Nova Scotia, and they suggest some potential pathways forward as we all work together to create change. So as I move through these more specific slides, you're going to see lots of data. And at the very top, I want to draw your attention to the top bar here, and that just tells you what the exact word of the question that we asked. So it's up there if you're really curious about what we asked as well as what we collected. So that's up there on every slide. So when we presented, and we split up those two facts, we split up the 30% rate and we split up the 35+1 rate. So we first presented the information and then asked Nova Scotians how that piece of information made them feel. And then you'll see right here all the responses down the side. And right at the top there, surprise. Surprise was the most common reaction from Nova Scotians just last week. And 30%, as you'll see there, chose that option. Also, maybe there's lots of information there, but I'll also maybe draw your attention down a little bit to the disappointed number. The disappointed number there is just 19%. That's of all Nova Scotians. This is representative public opinion research. In the other side of the slide, you'll also see some gender breakdowns. I haven't done that for all of the data that we're going to show and share today, but I've included it here because there are some notable differences there when it comes to those who selected surprise and disappointment. You'll see a difference between men and women. And particularly on the bottom part there, disappointment, with 23% of women in Nova Scotia choosing disappointment and 14% of men choosing that from the options provided. We split up the facts. We also shared the 35+1 rate here in Nova Scotia, and these are the results. This was the second question. It followed the previous one, but as you can see, the response was a little bit different. So when we presented the fact at the top, the 35%+1, you'll see that caused various reactions, some dismissal, some surprise, and some pride. And then similar results with the splits on the side. So this is the sobering part that I referenced up front. Right here on this one, it's just 18% of Nova Scotians saying they're disappointed by these numbers or the rate. Now we're moving into the second set of results here, or second section of results. And so after being presented those facts, the two rates, the 30% and the 35%, we followed up by saying, again, you can see it right there at the top, now that you know, blah, blah, blah. How important do you think it is for more women to run and more women to be elected? And 66% of Nova Scotians said that they considered it to be important. 66, pretty great numbers. It's not tremendously high, but it's over half. And given what was in the previous results, after we provided the information, told Nova Scotians where we were, this was the response that we got. We also followed up that question with a more detailed question here. And as you can see down the side here, lots of information there, my apologies, but I wanted to show you the response here because it's so important. Large proportions, and you can see the numbers on the side, 67, 60, 60, down the other side of the slide here, told us that they think it's important that elected officials of all genders and backgrounds backgrounds have access to convenient, safe, and affordable healthcare, that there's more public funding to go for programs that help women and other diverse candidates stand for public office, and that female politicians be quoted more in news stories. So the options we presented on the side that's not an exhaustive list. This is not a deep study, but it's the beginning of us testing potential drivers of change in our province and support for that in the general public. So again, high rates, 67, 60, 60, and that's of all Nova Scotians of different types, genders, backgrounds, regions, education levels, income levels, so on and so forth. Here's another slide up here. These slides are organized in the way that we ran through the questions. And as you can see at the top here, then we just also tested reactions to some potential benefits of more female representation in politics and diverse representation. And again, you can see the numbers on the side there, 60%, 58, 56, 54, 54. And small print on the side, but it's really the most important one is at the top here, and it was the most. There was the most agreement. There's 60% agreement in Nova Scotia right now that having more women and more diverse individuals in public office would generate better discussions and encourage decisions that reflect the needs and priorities of all Canadians. Again, very encouraging points of evidence that we can all use going forward to continue to make the case. So you might be sitting there asking yourself, who's the most inclined to want more female representation, and who's the most inclined to be making these positive associations between making these structural and cultural changes and having more women run for office and electing more women to office? It's women. You likely guessed that. But as I just quickly showed you here on the screen and flashed these numbers and quickly spoke to them, it's not just women. A lot of those rates were really high. They're in the general population. And then I very quickly here, you don't have to take my word for it, I've also just very quickly put it up here on the screen and showed you some of the differences on the key questions. And so you'll see gaps of, on the side there is listed the difference between the number of women and men that think it's important for more women to run for public office, for more women to be elected to public office. So there's consistently a gap here, a difference amongst men and women. But when we sort of remind ourselves back to the stuff that I've already covered earlier and shared from the stage, there's those big 66 numbers, those 60s. So it's not just us. It's not just me. It's also not just the folks in this room. There's a desire for change that extends far beyond this room. Often we are at events like this with like-minded people sharing this data. Part of our motivation today is to give you the big snapshot here in this province and to remind us all that there are the seeds of change in our community. There's support for some of the drivers of this potential change. And here at Abacus Data, as researchers in beginning to do this work here in the province and elsewhere in the country, we hope that you will consider us your partners in doing this measurement and helping to capture opinions in this area and help all of us together drive change.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for that early preview of the data and those illuminating statistics. It's now my pleasure to introduce and invite the other panelists for this evening to join us on the stage. So I'd like to invite Claudia Chender and Mary Rita Holland, as well as Kelly Bennett, back to the stage. And of course, tonight's moderator, Maya Eichler, who is a professor of women's studies and a former research chair here at Mount St. Vincent University.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's great to see such a wonderful turnout. I think we're all really pleased with how many of you have joined us. Lots of familiar faces, but also new faces and some students as well. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's my privilege, really, to be invited by the organizers to moderate this panel inspired by Alexa's bold leadership and lasting impact, to pick up on the title for today's event. I'm joined by an amazing group of women leaders. Kelly Bennett, of course, you've already met. Claudia Chenda, everyone knows. And my colleague here from the Mount, Mary Rita Holland, Nancy's chair in Women's Studies. So we're going to begin with this question. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and maybe tell us a little bit about your path to leadership. Is there any key moment that stands out that helped you embrace that path to leadership? Any stories that stand out? So just a little bit about yourself. Mary Rita, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Is this working? Okay, great. Thanks, Maya. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Rita Holland. I'm the Nancy's Chair in Women's Studies here at Mount St. Vincent University. It has been a wonderful transition for me. I was involved in politics since 2011 in Kingston, Ontario. I have a former campaign volunteer here. Then so many familiar faces, too. It's amazing to have this group together. And so, yeah, it started in 2011. I guess by way of introduction, it's probably I can touch on your question, Maya. Jack Layton had just run a fantastic campaign federally. And so I was at home with my daughter, who was about 3 at the time, and doing a PhD, my first attempt at a PhD. And just needed to get out of the house, essentially. Was looking for some ways to get involved. And so contacted the campaign office for Jack's campaign, and what a great experience. What an amazing first volunteer opportunity. I would say, though, that I started out thinking, maybe perhaps my skills in public policy would be put to use on that campaign. But no, like every volunteer, I was on the phone, I was asking for money. So I learned pretty quickly what was required, and I got to know a lot of people in the Kingston area. So that was how it all started. Jack came, there was a big rally. It was, politics just suddenly came alive for me. And so a few months later, they were looking for a provincial candidate, and I put my name up, and I was formerly known as the woman who was sweeping the campaign office after election day for the federal campaign, and then suddenly saying I would love to get involved. Initially ran in 2011, no recognition obviously, but we did okay. Ran again in 2014, came in second provincially. Ran again municipally in 2014, got elected to Kingston City Council. So I was there for 2 terms. And then got excited about going back into provincial politics because my area of interest in terms of research is health policy. So I really wanted to be the Minister of Health. So I ran in 2022 and again, second place, finished unfortunately. And at that time I had my PhD and was quite interested in pursuing the policy work. So yeah, I got this amazing opportunity. I've been here at Mount St. Vincent for the last year and a bit. I've got 1 more year here. Had the opportunity to get to know Claudia and to work on her fantastic campaign with some amazing new members of the legislature who are here with us this evening as well, and got to work on local campaigns and see other women get elected. And that was an amazing experience. So yeah, that's what has led me here.
Thanks, Claudia.
I actually just got told by my team that I'm really bad at introducing myself, so you guys can tell me how this goes. So I'm Claudia Chender. I'm the leader of the Nova Scotia NDP. I am joined by my colleagues Krista Gallagher and Susie Hansen, so very happy to see them. Yeah, after a long day at the legislature, so you guys get the first cabinet positions. Also, I do want to mention that Travis McDonough is here. Very pleased to see you here representing the family, as you do, as you all do at these events. And it really is an honor to be here recognizing Alexa's legacy, which is a segue, I think, into some of the reasons that I got involved in politics. And so when I was at Goresbrook Junior High School in Halifax. Did you go to Goresbrook Junior High School also? No? Okay. Alexa came to visit my grade 9 class. And I often tell this story, and the punchline is, I don't remember what she said. I don't remember what she talked about. I don't remember what message I was left with, but I remember her presence. And I remember sitting in a little room in the library and listening to her and thinking, wow, she seems so smart and she seems so cool. And she really seems like she's changing the world. And that's what I want to do. And so I think it was really a lesson in if you can see it, you can be it, truly. It just implanted itself like a little seed in my brain. And so obviously it wasn't a direct path. I did a lot of other things between now and then. I have 3 children. 2 of them are teenagers. Please pray for me. I worked in business. I worked in nonprofit. I have a law degree. And so I guess the kind of second stage of this political virus for me was when I was in law school. My law professor for constitutional law, I thought I wanted to be a constitutional lawyer because that was how I had decided by that point that I was going to change the world. And my law professor was Andrew Petter, who had been the Minister of Justice in British Columbia in an NDP government. And at that point, I was not a particularly partisan person. I was just interested in politics. I was interested in doing the right thing. And he one day said to our very progressive UVic law class, so who's going to run for politics? And nobody raised their hands. And then he spent the entire lecture chastising us. And it really, really stuck with me. And the message he delivered was something like, just because you don't think politics is cool doesn't mean it's not a place where really important decisions get made. And, Kelly introduced herself as a privileged, white, heterosexual woman, also guilty as charged. There was something in that moment where, his message was really, if you have the capacity to do this, if this is something that you think is interesting, you better try to do it. Because if you don't, someone else will. And so you don't get to be upset at the decisions that are made if you don't put yourself in that game. And it wasn't, it took me another decade, but I think that really landed for me. And I did care, and it was important to me. And so then fast forward to me at home with 3 children under 2, watching, you guys can do the math later, watching the McNeil government at the time dismantle school boards. That's the other person I want to recognize in the room, Peter Day, who's the NSTU president. Dismantle school boards, remove funding for film in Nova Scotia, cut the film tax credit, and make a bunch of decisions that just so happen to deeply impact me. And you learn when you're in politics that those are the things that move people. First, it has to hit you, and then you kind of think about the rest of the community and the society and the province. And those hit me. My husband worked in the arts. My children were just going to start school soon. And I just found myself yelling at the radio all the time. And then I remembered what Dr. Petter had said to me. And I ran into Susan LeBlanc at a coffee shop, now my colleague, the MLA for Dartmouth North, who said, oh, hey, I'm on the search committee for Dartmouth South for the NDP. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I was actually just thinking about reaching out to someone about running for office because that seat had become open. And then I met Nancy Bose here in the front row, chatted with her. And so the rest is history.
Thanks, Claudia. It's amazing to hear. it's amazing and nice to hear how people can sort of plant a seed in you, and how important school is, and educators and teachers, and you can leave a lasting impact without knowing necessarily what comes later. Kelly.
Hello again. It's probably pretty clear who I am and what I do, but I am a pollster, researcher, political junkie, somebody who volunteers in my community, somebody who cares about the world around me. I knocked on my first door when I was 6 years old. And my father was running for the local school board in Ontario, and let me and my brother, and maybe even my mother, if we're being honest, know that he was going to stand for election, and was successful on his first run, and so continued after that to be elected 3 times. At one time, I think second last time he ran, this is a test of the memory now, he won by the largest margin in York Region, a record that actually stood until quite recently. So I've also come by this, honestly. Politics and government and political opinion is my chosen career path, but this path started very early for me as well. And I grew up, of course, I've shared a lot about myself, so I might as well just keep going. I'm an elder millennial, so I grew up watching Alexa McDonough as in my, at the time, suburban Toronto home. On TV and seeing Alexa's picture in the paper, and also had the same sort of awakening. And so I consider her amongst, with the addition of my father, the greatest political influences of my life. And so it's a great honor to be here today. I now also have the privilege of first helping bring abacus data to my new hometown of Halifax. I say new kind of with a little bit of a laugh because I've been here 15 years. So this very much is my home now, but we are very proud to now have a growing presence here in Atlantic, Canada. And an office, and to be doing all kinds of political polling, as well as research on other topics. Our company is very familiar with this topic and is making a contribution that we're very proud of across the country. We have Equal Voice. Inspired Perspectives, I think is the name of it. Another organization, Apathy is Boring, as clients. We are very committed to doing work in this area. And the research that we ran last week that I shared at the beginning, want everybody to know here that it's just the beginning of us to ask these types of questions here in Nova Scotia and in Atlantic Canada, and continuing to be a partner, public partner in doing measurement of this topic. And I shared as much as I could there up front, but I think we'll also package this up and release this. And I do sincerely mean that this is just the beginning of us beginning to ask these questions here in this part of the country, and we intend to continue this work.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all 3 for sharing your story. And I can hear the passion in your voice for politics and for social change, so I'm sure it will be inspiring to a lot of folks in the audience. I want to ask you next about some of the challenges you have faced on your path to leadership, but also during leadership, and what has helped you be resilient, what has helped you adapt, to persevere, to keep going, or to decide not to keep going. What are some of the lessons learned, your personal lessons learned about resilience in politics? Maybe I'll start with you, Claudia, if that's okay.
Resilience. Well, it's a good moment for the question because we're in the middle of a legislative session that requires that, I would say. Well, I mean, I think it goes back to, this lyric keeps running through my head. My son is a big Hamilton fan, the musical, for those of you who've seen it. And there's the number that goes, I was in the room where it happened. In the room where it happened, the room where it happened. And I think that's where I am now. And when I start to flag and fade and get frustrated, I remember how important that is. Like, I remember walking into the legislative chamber for the first time, and my then colleague, Dave Wilson, who had been there for a very long time and had been a minister of the Crown, said, like, take it in. This is, that you're now part of like a very important tradition. And so I take that responsibility strongly. And I think as a parent, this is an uncertain time. And I think, speaking for myself, it's a time full of the unknown, fear, divisiveness. I mean, we'll get into those things. But to the extent that myself and my colleagues can have a voice in the decisions that get made about the future of my children, about the future of our province, that buoys me. It really does, because I really believe that the things we're fighting for are so important. And I believe that the voices we're bringing, if we go back to Kelly's slideshow, are so important. Many of those women and gender diverse MLAs are ours. And those voices are so important. So I think that's a big piece. My colleague Lisa Lachance has a little emotional regulation chart that she has laminated for us. And so whenever we get upset in the legislature, she just puts it on our desks. Breathe, count to 5, close your eyes. So, there's also little tiny tactics like that in resilience for sure. But I also, I guess, want to say that part of the resilience is remembering what's important. And so one of the things that our team has tried steadfastly to do since I was elected, and I give a lot of credit to Gary Burrell for this actually, is to orient our lives around what really matters. And so as a caucus full of predominantly women who have kids in school and responsibilities and aging parents and all those challenges, those are important, and we value those as important. And so we value the work, but we also value the people we love, we value our communities, and we structure the work in that way. And so I think when people talk about the toxicity of politics and the challenges, a lot of it is because we are in a building built for men, in a system built for men, with a debate style built for men. And to the extent that we can shift that so that it's built for everyone, to work towards a universal design of politics, that's what we're doing. And I think that creates resilience. And so my hope is that as we do that for ourselves, we do that for everyone, and we build that out in real time. And I think, maybe we'll get to the question of how do we recruit candidates, et cetera, et cetera. And I always get that question, and we just do it, right? Like, it's not, we don't talk about doing it. We don't think about how to do it. We literally just do it, because we can say to people, our colleagues have had children while they've been elected. Our colleagues have had, children with disabilities that they've been able to care for. Like, whatever it is, like, we're going to make it work because your voice is important. And I think remembering that creates a lot of resilience.
That's great to hear. I can see how, as the leader of the Nova Scotia NDP and as the leader of the official opposition, you've really been able to reshape what leadership can look like, right? So that transformative piece is so important. And I think that's really exciting to me, because it's not about, let's add more women and stir and just keep the system the way it is. That doesn't provide any future or hope for others to want to be part of politics. So that is really helpful to think about it that way. Kelly, do you have anything you want to add about overcoming challenges and being resilient in politics?
I shared some of my background in the first question, but not all of it. Before joining Abacus Data and taking this current role, I was a provincial public servant, and I supported cabinet ministers as well as 3 premiers here in Nova Scotia. And so that experience gave me a very close-up look at some of the unique challenges that women in politics in particular face, and some ability within my own professional life to do some direct comparison and to see a difference. And now doing the work that we do, asking Canadians, Nova Scotians, and women in particular questions about their own interest in politics and in running, serving as candidates, running for public office. I now see from a different vantage point, unfortunately, how many barriers still stand in the way, and in many ways, what a tough go it is. And I am also a woman in politics, and I have experienced some of those same barriers that are big limitations, and that are discouraging a lot of women and diverse candidates from putting themselves forward. Some of those things are cultural things, and others are structural things that are in place. There wasn't the room here up front to share the full depth of what we've already collected on some of these topics, but maybe I'll just, before we keep the conversation going, share another recent finding from some of our national research on gender parity and female representation and women in politics. And that's that in a very recent study, a national study survey conducted earlier this year, it was just in January and February, for a client organization. We picked up the stat that just 13% of Canadian women earlier this year told us that they would even consider running for public office. That's an incredibly low number, and twice as many women in Canada said that they told us just earlier this year, in a representative public opinion survey, twice as many Canadian women said that they would volunteer on a political campaign than serve as a candidate themselves. So I just share more of that sobering information, and share it with the hope that it is a rallying cry for us to use now some of the data that we've collected and are sharing today, and are committed to keep collecting, to create change and to address some of those cultural and structural barriers that continue to stand in the way.
Thank you, Kelly. We'll return to that poll. Thanks for sharing that data as well. Mary Rita, over to you. Do you want to share your challenges and resilience as well?
Sure.
In
yeah.
politics?
I mean, there's lots to say, but I'll try to limit it. I can certainly group some of these experiences because I've had the opportunity to be sort of in government essentially as a municipal councillor, and then also the experience running multiple times as a candidate with the NDP, the provincial NDP. And then also something I failed to mention, I was president of the Ontario NDP for 8 years as well. So I got a really good hands-on experience with the running of campaigns, the recruiting of candidates, those kinds of things. I mean, for sure, yes. Like we need to keep having really honest conversations, I think, about some of the cultural challenges that Claudia was mentioning in terms of places that just were not designed for us. We are starting to do that more at the Mount. A little plug for the Alexa McDonough Institute lecture series, which is taking place now throughout this year on the subject of gender-based violence and women in leadership roles, because we see it not just with politicians, of course, but women who are academics and advocates and volunteers and people who are looking to make this change, and everyone needs to be supported. So two very different experiences with municipal council. We were about, I mean, maybe like a quarter, maybe 25% or so would be women on council during my time. And we certainly, of course, it's essentially nonpartisan, but we were not all aligned politically. So we had to do the work to sort of work on various issues with colleagues who wanted to move things forward. We were known as a fairly progressive council, so we kind of had a majority of votes, so we got to make some pretty interesting change during that time, which was amazing. But I would say overall the experience being on council really was kind of what Claudia is talking about as far as being in that space and just really not being able to name the very uncomfortable feeling. It was a lot of tiptoeing around egos. It was a lot of, to get things done, you do it, I'm sure lots of folks here have done it in their jobs or in a boardroom, to just sort of make peace, build consensus, try to get things done. And you're not calling out the sexism in that case. It was pretty old school sexism, honestly, when I first got involved in politics. So back in 2011, we didn't have social media, believe it or not. It was a really blessed time. And so the experience early on with the NDP was fantastic. I was recruited because I was a woman. There was a women's committee which had funding to help with childcare costs or wardrobe, things like that. So many women were supporting in every possible way, and it felt like I was doing something important for women. And again, old school kind of types of attacks, very much the sorts of things that you would expect as far as, I don't agree with you and I'm going to tell you that in a sexist way. And then 2014, social media came, but it was sort of the heyday. It was all very exciting. We built momentum. We benefited from it. We had really great campaigns, mobilized a lot of support. And throughout this whole time, what I have to say is, and then being also president, the privilege of working with people who are so passionate about getting women and diverse candidates elected. And they are not just women and diverse volunteers, the men too. We had just incredible male staff and volunteers and people who were like the truest allies, who were there doing the work to make it happen because they believed in that kind of change. So that's really I think the foundation of where the resilience came from for me in politics, was all that support from men also, and then being able to do the work also of just moving everything forward as president and trying to find ways to change politics, generally speaking, change people's perceptions, get more diverse candidates to run. And so that has all been really rewarding and empowering. So I've had a fantastic experience overall, but yes, also death threats.
Thanks, Mary Rita, for talking about the supports. I think that's something we might want to come back to afterwards, how maybe each one of us can do something to support those who want to take on these leadership roles. But I want to now go back to what you had mentioned, that polling data. Only 13% of women in Canada would consider running for political office. So what advice would each of you give women, but also just more broadly speaking, young Canadians who are feeling discouraged, disillusioned about politics, but still do want to make a change? Because I know from our students at the Mount, we have a lot of students who want to get involved and want to make a difference, but maybe politics doesn't seem like the place to do it. But what words of advice, maybe also caution, but also encouragement, would you give people thinking about this, young people and women and others who have been underrepresented in politics? Kelly, do you want to start this round off?
Go for it. I know there's some students in the room. I've shared my own story. I started young. I found other ways to be a woman in politics, to make a contribution. I look forward to continuing to make a contribution. Also, just want to say, find others around you that share your commitment to service more generally. Lean on them in those difficult moments. Also, look for others who can serve as sources of inspiration, personal inspiration. From the stage, we all three described important people in our lives that inspired our work. And I think in one way or another, we also acknowledged how important it is to have a community and how necessary it is to have a community and to feel the support of those community members, whatever that looks like, whoever they are, to help you push forward. As I've said a couple of times already, we are committed to continuing to do the work of measuring where we are on this. Yes, earlier I shared some really hard facts, but also even today in those first set of questions that we ran here and in this first batch of results, there are all kinds of signs that there are many others out there. When presented or reminded of the facts of where we are, they also share your desire for change, and they're behind you. 66% of all people in this province want to see more women run for office and be elected. As I shared earlier, there is also already quite broad-based support for making the changes that will help the big change to happen in our province. I also want to just maybe quickly add before we continue here, but towards the end of the presentation, I shared support levels for some of the potential drivers of change here in our province and the options that I ran there, the potential actions where we tested current support for them. They were inspired by another conversation that Claudia and I and others, both former and current female politicians and staffers had not too long ago. I think it was in the spring or beginning of the summer, and I heard around the table there were Chatham House rules in that closed room, but I heard references to the importance of healthcare and access to healthcare. You may have seen that on my list, Claudia, there of options we ran there and presented in the surveying, and the support is already there. Those were the results we showed today, and not all of the things that surfaced in that conversation or that are surfacing in other conversations have that level of support at this point, but there are a number of things that I showed on the screen, these measurements that we've taken that clearly demonstrate that Nova Scotians of all backgrounds, of all genders, and various other characteristics already support those things. And there are the proof points that there is a desire for us to take action in meaningful ways right here in the communities that we are all part of.
Thanks, Kelly. That's certainly encouraging to young people, I'm sure. Claudia, what advice might you give?
So just to kind of pick up on that quickly, Yeah, I think as I was saying, we need to change the design of our system if the question is, do we get people to run, right? When I talk to women about running for office all the time, what about my kids? Is there a schedule that we know in advance? Like, I don't know how long I'm going to be at the legislature tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to be there next week. I don't know if I'm going to be there till midnight. And I'm not going to know until the night before. Like, that's absurd. That violates every labor standard. And I'm happy to do it, but it doesn't need to be done that way. It could be so much better. So that is heartening that there is support for that. But I guess, my answer would be, if you're really passionate about making change, follow your passion. Susie Hansen was a community organizer. Krista Gallagher was a small business owner with a passion for local food. They bring that right into the legislature. And you don't have to bring it into the legislature. Like, the reality is, the work that I do, the change that I advocate for, I take my cues from activists and scientists and physicians and researchers and environmentalists and people who are at the forefront of the work they're doing, who understand it and who can help me understand how to push the envelope. So I think there are lots of ways to make change in the world, and politics is definitely not the only one. But I guess I would also go back to the fact that it is where really important decisions get made. So, my advice is remember that. Because I think we live in this siloed universe. We or our digital overlords or some combination decide what it is that we pay attention to. And it's pretty easy to tune out. It's easy to tune out media. It's easy to stay in your algorithm. Whatever TikTok serves you or whatever social media platform you're using. But tune in is, this is really, I was just actually at Mount St. Vincent, and I was saying the same thing, like tune in, pay attention. Attention is such a precious commodity. I think Taylor Swift had something really good about that to say, for those of you Swifties, when she broke the news of her new album. But no, she talked about it. Sorry to quote Taylor Swift, but attention is a really important commodity. Pay attention. Follow your passion. Do what you want to do, but don't forget where decisions are being made. And don't be afraid to engage in those spaces. Because I think the other thing we hear, and Megan Leslie talks about this all the time, hundreds of women, and I'm getting towards that number now, have come to her and said, do you think I could really do it? And she said, not a single man has ever asked me that question. So, I think my message for women who want to engage in politics is, yes, you can. Don't bother asking. The answer is yes. And then go from there. And so engage in the way that you want to engage. But we all have imposter syndrome. Women have it worse. I'm sure that there are statistics to back that up, but I don't have them with me.
We do.
But, the reality is, what makes a difference is a passion for your community, a passion for your work. And when we can bring that into the legislature, it's when we make really important change. And I guess I'll finish that by saying, when I told my daughter to come see me at question period the other day, she called me right before and she said, Mom, do I have to? And I was like, you know what? No. You don't. It's really bad in there right now. Don't come. But that's the part that people see, right? People see question period. They see people barking at each other. But sometimes there are these very different moments in the legislative context. So sometimes we pass bills around organ donation that save people's lives altogether. Sometimes we pass bills declaring intimate partner violence an epidemic, and MLAs from all parties stand up in support and give speeches. There are those moments, and those moments are largely driven by advocates who push and push and push until the change gets made. And so if you can be one of those, do that. And if that happens to be in the arena of politics, that's amazing. But it can happen in all different places. I guess the bottom line is just don't forget about politics. Don't forget what happens there, because just because you ignore it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Thanks, Claudia. Very good advice. Mary Rita.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I feel very strongly the fact that Claudia has studied constitutional law. This is something I have the opportunity to teach at the Mount and often talk about the Constitution. Most of my classes actually start out with that conversation, because I do think it's important for everyone, not just younger folks, but for all of us to understand the healthcare system, for example, in Canada, hasn't been around that long, there are many myths about our healthcare system. It is not actually universal. It is not actually, you don't necessarily have access all across the country in the same way. And we all know that so many aspects of healthcare are not covered. So it's not free, despite the fact that many people would say that in Canada, or they would say that based on the fact that it's a public insurance system. But then folks don't exactly know what is public insurance. So I have the opportunity to teach courses along these lines and talk about Tommy Douglas's legacy and go back to Wordsworth, and to be able to show people that as Claudia mentioned a few times, that this is where the decisions, this is where policy happens, this is where something so valuable as our quote unquote universal healthcare system came from. And I think we all need to do a better job of understanding that history a little bit better in order to know that it was a contested history when it comes to healthcare, for example. And there is nothing guaranteed about our current healthcare system. So the more that we can have conversations with our students, for one, but also just with the general public about some of our own misconceptions and myths about politics and about the issues that we care about, because yes, we can't forget about politics. There are countries all over the world where politics isn't a dirty word. It is something that people understand means water or means access to food. It is about every aspect of our being and our society, and we really do need to know not necessarily the process, not necessarily tune into question period every time, but we need to know that all of our voices are a part of building these programs together, and if we care about them, we need to fight for them. And for the younger folks who are interested and want to move things forward even more in so many different directions, yes, there is going to always be room for having those conversations. I know that the way that it happens now is more complicated than ever before with technology, but being, getting good news sources, staying in this conversation is so valuable for everyone's lives. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mary Rita, and thanks to all three of you for reminding us that there's many ways of staying engaged. We have a few minutes for questions, so I want to open it up to the audience. Maybe we'll collect 3 questions. Who would like to ask a question? Tegan has a microphone, and Alicia. Okay.
Hello, thank you. Hello, thank you everyone. I have the pleasure of being here. My name is Zainab Al-Mukhtar, and I'm a scholar, researcher, and very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I like to take your advice for women that face several intersectionalities of health, gender, age, ethnicity, underrepresented group. And they want to make a change, and this is me, for the new generations. So from their experience, and how do they get into politics or into any situations where they can guide that change? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Let's see if there's 1 or 2 more questions we can collect.
Hi, my name's April. I am a English and political studies major here at the Mount. I'm in my 3rd year. I was just wondering how influential you pursuing law, specifically to Claudia, impacted your political journey as someone who is looking to possibly get into law. Yeah, essentially, that's my question.
Thank you so much for your questions. So how about we do a final round, if you can be brief in the final round, and just answer whichever question you would like. Kelly, do you want to go first? And we'll go from right to left.
I've already shared quite a few of my personal sources of information, of inspiration, sorry. Can I think of another? I'm currently watching what Premier Susan Holt is doing in New Brunswick, very close to home. She is someone who was certainly resilient in her journey to public office, who ran a number of times, found other ways to be a woman in politics when she was defeated, stuck with it, and is now the premier of the province. I was at her first State of the Province address earlier this year. It was at the end of January in Fredericton, and she talked from the stage quite openly about how persistent and resilient she needed to be to get to where she is today. I think her example shows that it is possible. She also, from the stage, talked about the community of people who had helped her along the way. That resonated with me. I think it is a difference maker on the pathway to standing for office and being elected. That shows up in our research as well. We also have an excellent example right here beside me, somebody who is changing the way that politics is done in our province. I'm a pollster. As you know, I followed the last provincial election quite closely. Well, we did a lot of polling and was often asked to comment, slightly awkward sitting up here, on Claudia's performance. And it's very clear to me sitting here that she is the source of inspiration for many people in this room and many people who are not in this room. And so I would be remiss not to acknowledge that. And proud to sit on this stage with both of you here tonight.
That's very kind. Your question about law. So there are very few lawyers in the legislature, and I actually think that's really too bad. At the same time that I think we need every voice in the legislature, we actually need people who know how to read legislation. It's not easy. And we don't have very many because it's just the structure of it. You used to be able to do it differently. Now it's like, can you go back to your law career? Do you have all this debt? There's all kinds of structural issues. I think... I'm a person who went to law school, articled, and then did a bunch of different things with that degree. If you're interested in it and you can do it, I think it is really valuable. I think that thing of if you don't know what to do, go to law school. If you're an art student, I kind of think that's a good idea, actually, if you can, because you, again, to the point of how decisions get made, where decisions get made, you understand how those decisions get made. That's what you learn. You learn how they get made. You learn what decisions have been made. You learn how they've changed. And I think it is a really valuable skill to have. And to your question about engagement, I think, Mary Rita is a great example. I'm a lightweight. I had a EDA that had money in the bank and was ready to support me and that showed up with a bunch of volunteers, and I won my first shot. And, I've been extraordinarily lucky on my political journey. But like as Mary Rita talked about, then there's lots of other stories, whether it's you, Mary Rita, or Susan Holt, where it takes a lot longer. There are lots of other challenges, but we do everything with an intersectional lens in our work. And I think a lot of that goes to the structural. So for you, I would say just get involved. Like whatever your political bent is, if elected politics is what's interesting to you, engage with the parties, engage with the volunteers. Say, what can I do? How can I engage? And it might take a couple times, as Mary Rita said. They might just make you raise money for a while, but but there will be a place. There's no question. And we have a lot of work to do to make those places more accessible in every sense of the word. And, we are hell-bent on doing that. I have been introducing legislation since 2017 to change the way our House works, to change the way we do things, to create situations where childcare is available to MLAs, all of that. So as we work on that part, just join us, is what I would say. Yeah.
I'll build on that first of all, and just say, I think obviously the NDP has been really leading the way when it comes to truly, genuinely doing candidate search, looking for intersectional candidates, getting people. Really, it's not a matter of, it's because of what we've been hearing about in terms of the numbers and the representation issue. You do have to ask women candidates multiple times, and there are way more barriers, we know, for people who are living with disabilities or marginalized, racialized. Those folks are having an even harder time to even get to the point of saying yes to being involved. So yes, the NDP takes this work really seriously, and it's not just a matter of it's meaningful work. It is they understand that this is how to build better government and better representation, and that democracy needs that. So. I'm clearly very partisan in my background. I also have the opportunity, being like a dusted off former candidate and politician, to be able to speak more freely on some of the partisan issues. But in that case, that's 100% progress. At the municipal level, I'll just say quickly, because I think that's where a lot of people do get started, whether it's doing things in the community on boards or committees, and there's change to be made there for sure. I don't know the Halifax situation. In Kingston, the process for getting nominated to serve on a board or a committee at the municipal level involved a nominations committee, and that nominations committee was not very diverse. And really all that had to happen was that people would put in their names, and it was kind of like a closed door meeting where it was so ridiculous. An HR nightmare where people are talking about people's qualifications and essentially just sort of saying, I know this guy, let's do it. He won't cause a fuss, let's put him on this committee. And so we did change that process while I was on council, because we knew that we weren't doing the work of recruiting people and asking people to get involved, and that needed to happen. It's tricky at the municipal level because they're nonpartisan, but the clerk's office eventually added information to the application regarding diversity. And so then I joined the nominations committee and became chair of the nominations committee. And then we talked about the fact that along with qualifications, we were looking for diversity. So those changes, like Claudia's mentioned, the kinds of structural challenges that exist, with enough people doing this work, I think we're going to see more of those changes, making it easier because of all the logistical and life reasons that folks are not getting involved. I do see a lot of progress there. But yeah, really, to Keith's point, it's the inspiration, it's the leaders before that sort of are resonating always when I think about whether I'm going to be involved in politics again. It's, as Claudia's mentioned, it's like a calling. I grew up in New Brunswick, so I had Alexa McDonough on ATV. We only had 2 channels, and every now and then I got to see. I also got to see Elizabeth Weir. So in New Brunswick, and it was a page, the Legislative Assembly in New Brunswick, where during the time of significant disadvantage for the NDP. So Elizabeth Weir was the NDP leader, and she was the only woman on that side of the House, for sure. And she was so impressive, and she stood up every day, this lone voice, and challenged and spoke truth to power in a way that blew my mind as a young person. So yeah, that's one of the major inspirations for me. And thinking of Claudia and colleagues who are at the legislature now, who are doing that work. I mean, they're also really amazing, fun people. So if it's a privilege and a pleasure to do work with passionate women and people who are looking to make this kind of change. So I think if anyone here is interested, whatever your background, find someone who inspires you. They will hopefully continue to encourage you and keep asking you to run, and then run.
Just one more thing. So yeah, 35% of the MLAs are women and with one gender diverse member. But I was elected in 2017 and I was the 50th woman. The 50th in a couple hundred years elected. There are still, I think, more men named John than women who have been elected to the Nova Scotia House of Assembly. That's not a joke. So, I think, 35% actually might sound kind of okay in a vacuum, but we have a long way to go, so please stay engaged.
I want to thank our wonderful panelists for your commitment. For your commitment to social justice and democracy, and for the work you do every day. And also for coming here and so generously sharing your experiences and insights with us. And of course, you'll stick around for the reception, I'm sure. So if anyone has more questions or wants to just get some more tips from the three of you, I'm sure that they'll be available. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. I think the organizer is going to come back on stage. Thanks.
That was really, really inspiring. It's amazing to have such dynamic people in leadership roles right here in our community. So let's give them another round of applause. Thank you so much. In particular, I'd like to thank our moderator tonight. Dr. Eichler did just a terrific job. Thank you for traversing that interesting conversation for us. Thank you so much. To Kelly Bennett from Abacus Data, your Senior Vice President, Atlantic Canada. Thank you for those insights. I'm going to share the data that was shared tonight with everybody who's here, so expect a follow-up email. So thank you. To Mary Rita Holland, it's nice to see you again in your new town. It's fantastic. I'm sure you're going to be just as influential here as you were in Ontario. And then also to Claudia, my good friend. The last time I was here and we spoke, things have changed. And it wasn't mentioned yet, but you are the leader of the official opposition of Nova Scotia. Yeah. That's some very unique company. Claudia is part of a very interesting club. One of the three leaders of the official opposition in this country in different provinces. We have Claudia here in Nova Scotia, Mart Stiles in Ontario, and Carla Beck in Saskatchewan. It would be fantastic if Nova Scotia finally got a woman premier. I think that's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So this has been a fantastic evening. I also want to thank Heather McPherson for doing everything they could to be here with us tonight, and thank you for providing us with your video. To all of us here, we have a debt of gratitude to Mount St. Vincent University. So I'd like to thank Tegan Zimmerman. I'd also like to thank Alicia for their help from the Alexa McDonough Institute. So please join me in thanking them. Our incredible sound and AV tech, Greg here, who's behind the curtain. Thank you so much for your help tonight. I'd also like to thank the catering crew and all of the staff at MSVU. It's extremely rewarding to be able to come here and know that we're going to be taken care of. So I really do appreciate that. I'm just going to ask quickly if we could advance the slide to the partners and the sponsors. We can't do it alone. And the truth is that if it weren't for the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, if it wasn't for the Nova Scotia General Employees Union and the Ottawa and Dartmouth District Labour Council, it would be near impossible for the foundation. We are a small and mighty foundation. We're growing every year. But it's because of that support that we're able to make this journey. So I do want to say thank you. And to those of you in the room, we're very, very grateful for the partnership and the love. It means a lot to us. I'd also like to thank the McDonough family for sharing the legacy of Alexa with the foundation. It means a tremendous amount to our board of directors, to our members, to have Alexa's legacy part of the foundation. And we do have the Alexa McDonough Women's Leadership Center. If you're interested in that, please take a look at the website and find out more about how you can get involved. And the other things we are doing, events throughout the year, the interviews we're conducting, all in memory of Alexa McDonough and the incredible legacy that she's left for all of us. Then to all of you, thank you all so much for being here tonight. As we just heard, we have some food for everybody. We have some drinks. Please enjoy it. It's an open bar over there, so have a drink. There's non-alcoholic drinks there as well, if that's your preference. And please help us finish off the food, okay? So on behalf of the board of directors, thank you. We'll see you next year right here. Take care.